the of the levels and paths, and thus swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. And let's just do the 4 limitless contemplations, which are very, very important. And you should do these because it really is helpful to you. And let's do them in English first. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Senchen damje dewatang dewe jupan dempajute dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindrawa juchik nering chak tang ni tang trawe tang non tembola ne pa juchik. So good evening, everybody. Put your cameras on if you can. And I just realized that Danny was you, Heather. So I'm pleased to hear. And that's very good. And butt in if any of the newies want to ask questions or say anything, you're very welcome. Hello, Lynn. Hello, Eugene. I saw you coming in a minute ago. Are you there? Where's Eugene? I saw you coming in. Oh, good. Put your camera on, man. I like to see your... Oh, it is. Oh, divine. Aren't you all glad to see Eugene here tonight? Very nice. We're happy to have you. Okay, so tonight we're going to do again the part 2 of the Shambhala wisdom of the great Eastern Sun, the practical hows for enlightened living. And this is part 2. So if you didn't hear part 1, please go back and get it. And I'm going to start with a Russian story. It's a Russian initiation tale. Okay, can you let them in, Fee? There's 3 of them. Otherwise, I'll just let them. Okay, there we go. That's fine. Sorry. So this is a Russian tale, initiation tale about a being called Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga is an old woman with a wild, hag-like visage who stirs her pot and knows all things. She lives deep in the forest. When we seek her out, we are frightened, for she requires us to go into the dark, to ask dangerous questions, to step outside the world of logic and comfort. When the first seeker comes in, when the first seeker comes quaking up to the door of her hut, Baba Yaga demands, "Are you on your own errand, or are you sent by another?" The young man, encouraged in his quest by his family, answers, "I'm sent by my father." Baba Yaga promptly throws him into the pot and cooks him. The next to attempt this quest, a young woman sees the smoldering fire and hears the crackle of Baba Yaga, and Baba Yaga again demands, "Are you on your own errand, or are you sent by another?" This young woman has been pulled to the woods alone to seek what she can find there. "I'm on my own errand," she replies. Baba Yaga throws her into the pot and cooks her too. Later, a third visitor, again a young woman, deeply confused by the world, comes to Baba's house far into the forest. She sees the smoke and knows it's dangerous. Baba Yaga confronts her. "Are you on your own errand, or are you sent by another?" This young woman answers truthfully, "In large part, I'm on my own errand, but in large part, I also came because of others. And in large part, I've come because you are here, and because of the forest, and something I have forgotten. And in large part, I don't really know why I come." Baba Yaga regards her for a moment and says, "You'll do," and shows her into the hut. So the initiation journey has to start by saying, "I know nothing about nothing." I once told you that I actually had an Israeli woman who came to my groups over a long period of time, And I remember one day at the end of a lecture, she'd been coming for a long time, and she came up to me and she said, Melanie, I know nothing about nothing. Okay, so I said, after all these sessions, you know nothing about nothing. And I just called another person in the group, and I took her hand and her hand, and I joined them, and I said, go and help her find something about something, okay? But the thing is that we have to admit that this world is quite a strange place, and that really we are on a mission, and we are trying to find our way. We're trying to find another part of ourselves, which is really, really, really important. And I just want to read you, I've read it once a long time ago, but I thought I just came across it, was Nelson Mandela's letter that he wrote to Winnie Mandela when he was in prison. And he wrote, it was in 1975. He wrote a letter like this, and he said, incidentally, you may find that the cell, being the prison, is an ideal place to learn to know yourself, to search realistically and regularly the process of your own mind and feelings. In judging our progress as individuals, we tend to concentrate on external factors such as one's social position, influence, popularity, wealth, and standard of education. These are, of course, important in measuring one's success in material matters, and it's perfectly understandable if many people exert themselves mainly to achieve all these. But internal factors may be even more crucial in assessing one's development as a human being. Honesty, sincerity, simplicity, humility, pure generosity, absence of vanity, readiness to serve others, qualities which are in the easy reach within every being, are the foundation of one's spiritual life. This is what he wrote to, and I thought so interesting because those are all the Shambhala qualities that he's talking about. He said, development in matters of this nature is inconceivable without serious introspection, without knowing yourself, your weaknesses and mistakes, at least if for nothing else. The cell gives you the opportunity to look daily into your entire conduct, to overcome the negative and develop whatever is good in you. Regular meditation, say 15 minutes a day before you turn in, can be very fruitful in this regard. You may find it difficult at first to pinpoint the negative features in your life, but the 10th attempt may yield rich rewards. Never forget that a saint is a sinner who keeps trying. I'm fascinated that he actually meditated when he was in prison. It's quite amazing, actually, you know, that he had that insight. And I think he did have that insight. I think he just unfortunately got caught in so many things in the world, which is part of our mission and part of everything, not to get caught in everything that there is in the world, because it's really important that we don't. And then I wanted to just read you one little paragraph. You know, I do a prayer to Mandarava. Who was Mandarava? Mandarava was the consort, one of the consorts of Guru Rinpoche. She was the most beautiful being, and she and him went and taught all over the planet and all over other dimensions. And I've been reading this prayer very often. It's a long prayer from her book. It was a prayer that came about because Guru Rinpoche said to Yeshe Tsogyal, she said, how do we get her wisdom and knowledge? And he said, you sit in a devoted position and you say your prayers to her every day. And he gave this very long prayer about how you pray to her. And one of the paragraphs, I've been reading it for years, and I suddenly came across it this day. And I thought it's so interesting that it's about Shambhala, which is what we're learning about. And this is the one paragraph in that prayer. It says, in accordance with the prophecy of the Guru, she went to Shambhala, and with her great skillful means, tamed beings in the 25 paradises, 1,300,000 fortunate disciples were liberated in the rainbow body. And then you go to the feet of the mother, I supplicate. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Because, obviously, in that day and age, Shambhala was accessible, very accessible. And that was the enlightened kingdom. And I think Chogyam Trungpa's idea in really bringing the Shambhala wisdom to people was that he said, lots of the religions, including Buddhism, are difficult for people to really understand. But the Shambhala principles are very simple, very clear, and they're the way to be able to take yourself out of the darkness, even if you're uncertain, even if you're not sure, even if you don't know where you're going. The most important thing is that primordial dot, what we call the Buddha nature or the awakened nature, knows exactly what's happening when it's happening. Even though we, with our human minds, don't, and we're scared of the future, we're scared of things that are going to happen, we're scared of not being with finances, we're scared of where should we stay, where should we live, where should we go. And what is amazing about these teachings is that, that there she used to go to Shambhala to liberate beings. They were already liberated, but she liberated them into the rainbow body, which is the ultimate state you can achieve. So I just want to read you one more thing from Chogyam Trungpa's earlier book on warriorship. He said, first of all, Pema Chodron, who wrote a book, Comfortable with Uncertainty, she said that his aim in Shambhala was to throw people out of the nest, never to make you comfortable and sure, but to throw you out of the nest so you don't know where you're going. Like I said in the initiation trials of the Russian, it really, really, really throws you out. And he said, he said he never provided that external security that we all really want, or anything like that, because he wanted them to feel the insecurities and deal with them, but to deal with them different to the way we taught in psychology. Because in psychology, we look at the insecurities and then the therapist helps you to work through them. Here we're going beyond them. You go through them, but with a completely different attitude entirely. And I can't help myself, even as a therapist, I have to throw people out of the nest and make them go through that darkness. So he said, on the journey of the warrior bodhisattva, the bodhisattva is the one dedicated to the whole path, the path goes down, not up, as if the mountain pointed towards the earth instead of the sky. Instead of transcending the suffering of all creatures, we move towards turbulence and doubt however we can. We explore the reality and unpredictability of insecurity and pain, and we try not to push it away. If it takes years or lifetimes, just we let it be as it is. And I watch people on a daily basis going through such excruciating pain, but such excruciating pain. And sometimes really people want to put their heads under a duvet and just not look at it, not look around, not see anything like that. But you know what? That is the mirror. And it's a mirror bringing out that awaken, bringing out that primordial spot. That's what that mirror is. So when you've got insecurities and all of that, you can talk about them, but you've got to see that this is exactly the right time and the right place for what you need in your development, because this is a schoolroom. That's all it is. So go in, get your lessons and pull out after that, okay? And he says, as we move down, we discover the healing water of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the awakened heart. And he says, our heart wounded but softened. Right down there is a love that will not die. The awakened heart of bodhicitta that cares for all beings in difficult times, insecure times, uncomfortable times, It's only bodhicitta that heals. Part of bodhicitta is compassion, our ability to feel the pain we share with others. And tonight we're going to look at, in the Great Eastern Sun, he talks about, as he talks about so many practical things, he talks about people who wake up in the morning with absolute depression. And there's so many people that wake up feeling depressed. They hate their jobs, they hate their lives, they hate their relationships, they hate everything, and they wake up feeling absolutely depressed. Now he tackles this. He says, this tenderness for life, bodhicitta, awakens when we no longer shield ourselves from the vulnerability of our condition, from the fragility of our existence. So the more fragile, the more doubting, the more darkness, the more the potential for enlightenment, the more energy there is to become enlightened. And if you use that, it's absolutely exquisite. Before I go on, maybe somebody wants to say or ask anything, please do, because I'm going to give you a little summary of what we did last week, and then we're going straight on to the next chapter of his, which is about morning depression. So ask or comment or anything you want to say. Anyone? Oh, very quiet. You don't have to, but if you want to, I know a lot of you come out with things afterwards. Does anyone want to say anything?
Melanie,
Please.
so I know that book. I actually read it as well. Not the Eastern Sun,
The Warrior.
the Pema Chodron one.
Oh, yeah.
Where this is, I think, the very first. She writes in 108 little things, right? And I think that's the very first. So this is what you just read. There is this. It says, as you said, it's not going up; it's going down, and we go with the others, and all of this, and then it says something like, "If it takes years, or if it takes lifetimes, we carry on." So, I mean, me coming from this upbringing in the Western world and all that, and I remember we were always laughing about you and Kathy and I always said I'd take the slow boat to China, you know, and you and you saying, well, no, we are all in a rush, and we have to become enlightened now, and so taking our personalities maybe a little bit out of the equation. So when we think about impermanence, isn't one of the aspects that, well, we could actually die tomorrow, and we better practice now. And this particular text, which I, as I said, enjoy so much, says, whoa, maybe take it easy. Maybe it takes lifetimes. Maybe there is no rush.
You know what? There probably isn't a rush. But the thing, there probably isn't a rush. But the thing is, with what's coming in this degenerative age, okay, we in a degenerative age. If you read Guru Padma's prophecies for the degenerative age, okay, you will sit like me and you will have a half a heart attack, okay, because I can't believe what is read in the prophecies of degeneration. It makes the present world look very beautiful, and I don't think it's beautiful at all, okay? But we in the age of degeneration. And what happens in the age of degeneration, you see, the Buddhist teachings, they will last for X amount of years, okay? Then what happens is, and that's where Shambhala comes in, because Shambhala, is it a real place? Is it a place of the mind? Our minds have got all these levels of abilities in them. The actual primordial mind, not the primordial dot, not the human mind. The human mind has got all the human levels of consciousness. You know, Lauren, I was discussing with you the human levels of consciousness, you know, and that's what our human mind has got. Our human mind cannot project to other planes and other levels. So many people in this age go, well, you know what, you see, whatever's in black and white, that's what exists. How limiting. Because people have come back to tell us. There's a book called De Log, and this woman doesn't die. She lies in her bed and she gets taken to all these other dimensions and pure lands and everything, and then comes back and writes. A very simple woman, not someone who had the gift of writing or anything. And she comes back and she tells about these dimensions. So when the age degenerates, then a lot of these amazing teachings, they never end, but a lot of these amazing teachings get taken to those levels, okay, where we absolutely can't reach them. And we fools if we think we've got forever and ever and ever to awaken, and another life and another life and another life, and all the same crap and all the same karmic imprints and all the same stuff over and over again. We really don't have that time. And what they say is that when the next Buddha comes, there'll be 1,004 Buddhas in this whole eon, or whatever long you want to call it. And we've only had 4 of them. But when Maitreya comes, it is known, when Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings go, that Maitreya's teachings will not have, say, the tantric teachings and the real more advanced teachings openly. So that's what the rush is, okay? But for me, it's not only about time, because when you go to your highest mind, your actual primordial mind, there is no time, okay? You can go backwards and forwards. It's called the 4th time. It's not past, it's not present, it's not future, it's the 4th time. But what we've got to understand is that a lot of things will not be available. And that's why this is such a precious human birth. Because for me, that I can go onto YouTube and Google Dzogchen, the highest teachings that there are, and there are 100 teachers that have given out teachings like that. Now, you've got to be careful, because some might not give them out so purely. But what I'm saying is, this is an age of information, particularly with the social media. And therefore, we really need to use it. And Mart, I'm getting you on the fast train, okay? Because you can't sleep for lifetimes. And it's no good. You don't have to do practice. You know, you have to just be present and aware and intrinsically aware. But to get there, you do need practice. Do you understand what I'm saying? So what you're saying is absolutely true. But what level are you prepared to put your mind to? If you want to stay on this physical level for all time, stay on this physical level, but my God, it just goes round and round and round and round like a wheel, and you never liberate. And me, I want to liberate. I want to get out there. When you get the rainbow body, you can incarnate wherever you feel like, wherever there are people in trouble. You don't have to go through a birth of a mother and go through a whole lifetime and have all the traumas of your karma. You can just move from there and serve, which is amazing. Think about that. Anyone else want to say anything? Because it's really important, this. And I would much rather have you talking about your own lives than me just throwing millions of teachings at you that you say, very interesting, very nice, and then you don't go any further with it in your own life. Hello, Lily. I just noticed you. Okay, so let's look at last week. We were discussing the whole Shambhala kingdom and its wonderful principles on how to live in an enlightened way. It was or is an enlightened kingdom, governed by wisdom, compassion, technically advanced, great intelligence. I was telling you. Does it exist? Well, exactly what I've been saying here. Does it exist? Of course it exists, but not on this dimension, because the people are enlightened. So their minds are on a higher dimension. Don't limit yourself to this physical dimension. It's but a grain in the sandpit. There's just so much to explore and so much to understand and so much to do. So it's your perception of what that primordial dot is that we were talking about. And I really think that there are many, I think there are many beautiful things you can create with your own mind. But we spoke last week about the prophets and teachers and all the people who've given so many solutions to all the problems of the world and all the hardships and so on. And if you do this, that'll be a better person. This will be a good person. This is a bad person. This will take you here. This will take you there. We want to take a step beyond that, where there is no good and bad. It's just the basic goodness, the basic kindness, but it doesn't distinguish itself from evil. And one of the things that Chogyam Trungpa talks about in his book is about that there isn't really evil. And I'll come to that just now, that there really isn't evil. There's just ignorance. Now think about that. Because ignorance is ignoring the truth. If somebody goes up to somebody else and kills them because they've done something to them, or because they don't like them, or because they're jealous of them, in their mind, they think, I'm doing justice because I'm taking this person out. That's called ignorance, not evil. Because in ignorance, when you see all these terrorist groups, they really believe that if they kill people, if they suicide bomb, if they do this, if they torture people, they're doing it in the name of Allah. And afterwards, they're going to reap the benefits in this beautiful world. Now, how could they go to a beautiful world if their mind is already in a state of ignorance, turmoil, and darkness? They could never find that beautiful world, even if they tried and even if they believed they were doing a good thing. So it's really important that you understand that in the whole Buddhist philosophy and the Shambhala teachings, which Chogyam Trungpa wanted to really bring to the world, because he thought this could change the whole world and it could change people of all different religions, because it speaks to the basic goodness, what we were talking about last week, the primordial dot. And in Buddhism, we call it the awakened nature. And as I was saying to you, you've got your ordinary consciousnesses, which are all different things, the five sense consciousnesses, the mind that labels it, the klesha consciousness, which is your feeling about it, and the alaya consciousness, where all the imprints go. And then you've got your primordial consciousness, which has nothing to do with this. Now, when you die, you have that chance when you die, when all the ordinary consciousness dissolves, except for the alaya consciousness, which are your imprints, which go from life to life. But all the other things, what you see, what you perceive, what you believe, it all dissolves at death. And then you've got a chance to actually see that primordial dot and its expression. So it's really important that you do it, because otherwise, if you leave it until you die, you will just be frightened. Because as they tell us in all the teachings, it's really frightening when you really see the light, and when you really see the color, and when you really hear the sound. if you've never experienced it and you've never understood it, it becomes really scary. And I know lots of people, because I have these sleep state experiences over all the years where I would always meet a lot of people that I knew on the journey of their death. And they faint at death when they're exposed to this. Now, Chogyam Trungpa thought that by bringing the Shambhala teaching, by bringing the Shambhala teaching in, it would be a way of saying, hey, this is your cocoon that you have made with all your delusions and your paranoia and everything. And this is your morning depression, and what's it really all about? And this is the primordial dot in the sky, which is who you are. Now, when you die, if you can't recognize, know who you are in your best form, then you're just going to faint for that whole period of that recognition, and come out into the last bardo where you are facing your own karma. And once you're facing your own karma, it's really, really difficult for people to actually change that at that stage, because it's so overwhelming. And to watch it, it's you giving a movie of your own karma. And when you watch it, by that time, it's already too late to really change it. So why not wake up now and change it now and see, what is my habit? What is my perpetual habitual momentum? What do I keep doing? What are the kinds of people that are in my life all the time? What are they teaching me? What are they showing me? What's the mirror showing me? And if you can get it and go through it, walk through it, soon it dissolves, because it never was tangible, permanent, or anything else. That wasn't in any way what I intended tonight, but anyway, it just came out, okay? But the thing is that it's really important to me, because I cry for all the suffering. I really, really, really cry. And I cry when we saw those hostages coming and reuniting with their families and everything. We just cried and cried, because it's so sore, and the damage that is there, the damage from 15 months underground tunnels and being tortured and everything. The damage of the wars is very deep imprints. And for me, there's only one way that you could get through it. And I also listened last night to quite a lot of the Holocaust memorial that they had at Auschwitz, which was also very, very interesting, because the last survivors, stood up. I mean, they were in their 90s, and they stood up and they gave these unbelievable talks about man's inhumanity to man and everything. And I don't know how many of you watched it, but it touched the essence of my heart. And I thought, people have to wake up to their basic goodness. And this is what Chogyam Trungpa was trying to do with all the hippies in America and the hippies in Britain and all of that, who were drugging and doing all kinds of things. He wanted to bring the Shambhala kingdom to them, which is the kingdom of enlightenment, opening your mind to things and not being afraid of all these things that we do and we have. Shame, everybody's getting bumped off tonight. So we talked last week also about the cocoon, and he says that most of us live in a cocoon, and it's got lots of paranoia and lots of confusion, but we wake up in the morning and we're back in the cocoon, and we go to bed at night and we're back in the cocoon, and we go out and we're back in that cocoon. And he says it's called the setting sun world. That's what we were talking about. And the setting sun world is the opposite of what the warrior, the enlightened warrior is, because the setting sun world is so different to the great eastern sun. The great eastern sun is rising into light, and the setting sun mentality is the mentality of our whole world in samsara. It's a setting sun mentality. And just to make you laugh, I found, you know, I've got all my notes in all kinds of funny places, so I come across things. So just to give you an idea of the setting sun mentality, someone sent me these affirmations which were really affected, and it goes, some of them are really funny, and they're the setting sun. It says, I have the power to channel my imagination into ever soaring levels of suspicion and paranoia. And the second one, I assume full responsibility for my actions, except the ones that are someone else's fault. Okay. And the third one, I no longer need to punish, deceive, or compromise myself, unless, of course, I want to stay employed, which I think is really funny, because how often do we compromise ourselves? And then it goes, having control over myself is nearly as good as having control over others. And then it goes, I'm grateful that I'm not as judgmental as all those censorious, self-righteous people around me. And then it goes, I need not suffer in silence while I can still moan, whimper, and complain. And finally it goes, when someone hurts me, forgiveness is cheaper than a lawsuit, but not nearly as gratifying. So I thought, you know, those are the setting sun mentality, okay? So we talked about the cocoon and how Chogyam Trungpa says, you take one hand out and you take another hand out and you take a toe out and the air's cold and it's fresh and you're a little bit scared and everything. But and eventually you come out of the cocoon and then you take in a deep breath, and suddenly in a minute you feel the world is workable. I can work the world. You feel that you can work the world just in an instant, but you also know the cocoon is there to go back to. But it's really, he says, any sadness that we feel in the Shambhala view can be inspiring, because that gives us how we can feel for other people. When we go through sadness of our own, then we know and we understand it fully. So we also spoke about the dot and how that's the primordial basic goodness, okay? But it's not good in a way that other things are bad. It's goodness. It means it's beyond good. It's the beautiful, beautiful feeling that you have. Now, funny, I came across an article. You know, I usually am reading the news a bit in the morning of what's going on in the world, and I came across this article of this journalist. It was on BBC News, and it was this journalist who obviously was a very well-known journalist. I'd never heard of him or anything, but he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder from having been a journalist in a few wars, and he really had that. But apart from that, he wrote in this article very beautifully that he really suffered from depression, and that because he was known in the paper and the magazines and things that he wrote for, he had access to every psychiatrist, every therapist, every institution that dealt with all these kind of things. He had access to absolutely everything. And he said nothing really helped him. It would help him for a bit, medication for a bit, then it didn't help him anymore. But one day he wrote this, and I read it. I couldn't save that article, but one day he was walking in nature, and he'd really had a hard time. And he said, suddenly, just suddenly, and that's the point, he heard the sounds of nature. He heard them for the first time. He was always so engrossed in his depression. He heard the sounds of nature. And suddenly, he said, there were this flock of geese who were absolutely pure white geese. And they made this unbelievable sound as they flew over his head. And he said, in that moment, he said, I felt a lightness of being. For the first time, I felt a lightness of being. Now that is what the basic goodness is. It's beyond that you suddenly get a good job, or you suddenly have a nice relationship, or you suddenly feel good. It's a lightness of being. That means, he said, and then he went on to say, how could you keep that lightness of being? How could you hold on to it? Well, you can't hold on to it. You've just got to keep accessing it until it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, until it becomes the bulk of your life. And that's when the Shambhala wisdom hits home. Because he said in that lightness of being, Chogyam Trungpa said the world has been seduced, when he talked about mourning depression, by physical materialism as well as by psychological materialism, whatever that really is, and of course spiritual materialism. If you look up spiritual materialism, it means that you your whole spiritual path is related to the ego and to what you find and to all kinds of things. It's not a real, genuine, deep pathway, okay? And he says, the spiritual materium is about money and status and power and social standing, all those things that we strive for. And he says, when we experience mourning depression or depression at any time, it is possible to cheer up and make it quite workable. Quite workable. It didn't say make it beautiful. He said make it quite workable. He said, but in Shambhala training, we learn how to manifest that lightness of being, that openness, that basic goodness. We learn how to manifest it. You know, it's so interesting because you can see sometimes when somebody's really, really down, okay, and I've taken a lot of time trying to talk to them, trying to explain to them, and I just go up to them instinctively. It doesn't happen so much because I do so much online now, but I go up to them and I just put my hand on theirs or touch them or stroke their hair or whatever I'm feeling at that moment. It's kind of a thought of, I can feel your pain, but in that moment, the person receives something which is beyond the depression. And what he's talking about here is, he says, there's always the primordial dot, the spark of goodness that exists even before you think, not connected to either pleasure or pain. In a flash of a second, you know what to do right away. It's opening up suddenly and trusting in the goodness. Now, I'm going to throw it open now for you to discuss, but in this wonderful text called Boundless Vision, okay? And I wrote this down because it's such an interesting thing, because he talks about in this text, it's a Dzogchen text, and he talks about self-release of the 5 sense faculties. And he says, in the consciousness of your visual field, first he does the visual field, so what you're seeing, the form arises in the eye, okay? So you see something in front of you, it might even be something negative, but the form arises in front of your eye. That's called your visual consciousness. In the very initial moment, the physical, what you see, the energetic, which is the energy of that, or the speech that you might think of, and the mental aspects, all those 3, body, speech, and mind, are known about that thing you are seeing in the first moment. But as soon as the first moment passes, you use your mind to assess, judge, or look at, or decide upon that which you see. So the first glimpse, what he was calling the lightness of being, is the real one. It's like when a child comes into a temple and a child sees all the beautiful things in the temple. He doesn't for 1 minute start to say, and what's that? What's this? Why is this blue? Why is this red? Sometimes children do after they've been trained. But initially, they come in and just drink the beauty in. But with our sight, with our sound, with our touch, with our feeling, the first initial moment, there's no thought. It's fresh. It's open. It's light. But then the mind comes in. I don't like it. I want it. I need to do this with it. It's a dark color. It's not my scene. I love it. I must possess it. Soon as that comes in, the pure perception is gone. Can you all understand what I'm saying? And I took this out because sound, smell, taste, and touch is the same. I've taken it out of context in this text, but I just want you to understand from tonight and from these Shambhala teaching that there is a moment in which the lightness of being is there. And then straight away, we usually, because of our habitual pattern, go back to all the other crap. But once you train in that, shame, people are getting bumped off and back, bumped off and back. Once you train in that, you can start making those moments longer and making and bringing that basic goodness into your life and putting it into so many things instead of the way we're viewing our lives. So, okay, I'm throwing it open because I've given you a lot of stuff here. And then I want to talk about renunciation and everything. Anyone want to ask? Please.
May I, please? I just, I'm wondering if the word that comes to mind is awe. Is it like awe? Is that the same thing?
I love it because you know why? In awe, if you're truly in awe, then it is sacred. You could change the word awe to sacred. And I'm so glad you brought it up. He brings it in later.
Yeah.
Because it's living a sacred life. Do you know people who live a sacred life? They're so hard to come by. Not a sacred life. Not that. Not
Like inwardly sacred.
do this, do that, do the other. Someone who is light and who sees that this precious human birth is really sacred and in awe of it. Like wakes up in the morning and looks out of the window and thinks, oh, especially in South Africa, look at that blue sky. I spend a lot of time looking at the blue sky because from where I am up here, I have a beautiful view of the sky. It's exquisite. And if you look at it, then you start seeing little squiggles in the blue sky. And those are the energy that comes out of the sky that you can actually see if you spend enough time looking. They call them Vajra chains in Buddhism. But I'm just saying what you're saying is beautiful because in awe is sacred. Now, how much sacredness have you got in your life? I love that. What made you think of that, Tarlo?
I guess in the mornings when I have animals on the property that I have, and like when I get up in the morning and I go out to let the animals out of their enclosures, out of the barn, or whatever you might say. I just have that moment, you know, when it actually does remind me of South Africa often, is like that, just that moment of connection. It doesn't really matter what the weather's like. It's just that moment where you everything is just for that moment perfect, you know?
Now, how do we extend that? I love what you're saying. I love it because you're giving a perfectly simple example. Because our lives are so complex that it's pathetic in a lot of ways. You know, they're so complex. When it's so simple, what you're saying is you see the animal. I do it with these two of mine, you know, when they come in and they bend down and they do their prostrations in the morning. You know, and I just think they're the cutest little things on this earth, you know, and every day I say to them, remember this in your next life. Remember this in your next life. I tell them every day, you know, to remember it in their next life. But it's that moment of cuteness. It's that moment of deliciousness.
I experienced something today as well, which is maybe more of a psychological example.
Tell
Maybe,
me.
I don't know, maybe you can tell me what you think, but so I've been doing a lot of things differently, as you probably kind of intuited. And one of the things that I've been doing differently is giving myself a certain amount of time to do an activity rather than seeing an activity as being completed or not completed. I've just thought, right, I'm going to give myself an hour or 10 minutes or whatever. And it is what it is. If it's completed, it's completed. If it's not, it's not. And then there was this moment today where lots of things happened and were not completed, but were achieved. And I just had a moment where I just felt like, yeah, I suppose awe would be the closest feeling to what I mean, like fulfillment. Fulfillment is what I experienced, where I just saw my life through a different lens, just for a moment. Didn't last very long. It lasted probably a second.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I love it. Okay, I love it because you see, when you can have those moments, because the day, you know, sometimes when I'm rushing, and I usually am rushing because I've got too many things on my plate, which I hate, hello, Esty. But, you know, when I'm always rushing, sometimes I just catch my face in the mirror and I go, you're rushing. I actually talk to myself and I go, you're rushing and you hate that, you know, and I do hate it. And every day I tell myself not to rush, just to take everything. But there are too many things in the day to do, you know, and that is such a stupid decision, you know, such a ridiculous thing, you know, to actually not have the time. And like on a Saturday, my Saturday is usually my spiritual day, you know. So when I sit down in the morning, it's the first time that I'm not rushing through the prayers and not rushing through the practice and not rushing the meditation. And I love it. And sometimes I just sit and then I ponder life, what this really meant, what this really meant. You know, we have to give ourselves space. We have to. But the thing is, I love what you were saying about the completing, because basically, if you have 1 minute in an hour, that is that lightness of being, that awe-inspiring, that sacredness, then I think your day would be very different after that. Even if you go back to all the things you usually do and the rushing and the this and the that, but you've got that sacred feeling, and that's what the Shambhala teachings are really about. You can interpret them as you want, but it's very beautiful that also you develop an awareness when you actually see we're going to come to the part on blaming, because you know how many of you and me blame ourselves for everything, criticize ourselves, evaluate ourselves, and we always giving it to ourselves, and we always saying, you did it again, look at you, this, that, and the other. And you know what? That's also something that you have to cease and see the basic goodness in yourself. I feel so nice when I have had that basic goodness in a moment of the day, but why am I not having more of those and less of the critical moments? You know, we have to swing the balance in some way. It's really very important. And he says renunciation here, because, you know, renunciation, people think you have to give up everything in life. He says renunciation here is not rejecting or giving up anything. It's knowing with discriminating awareness, which is clear seeing, how to be there precisely and appreciate that first thought. So let's say you have one of the experiences one of you have shared, you know, you have that experience for a moment, and then after that, you appreciate it, and you try to just allow the day to go on in a more sacred way. Because Trungpa says he really gave these Shambhala teachings so that the world could turn into a much more sacred place. And a much better, because he says at that moment, you have yourself, your existence as a human being, and you can work with that. I'm going to repeat that sentence. And you can work with that. Sometimes we are so low, we are so enmeshed in all the problems, we can't see our humanness, we can't see our existence, we can't see how precious it is, and we can't work with it. We just get through the day, and we may feel pain and sadness. He says that's the setting sun world. Then your vision is dark, connected with death. Then you start analyzing everything about feeling bad. He says, and lots of people start planning ahead to have something to look forward to. You know how many people have actually said to me that what they do in their diary is, a few people have said they have something to look forward to. So they always have like an arrangement or a plan that's coming up, and that makes them feel better. Sure. Maybe we should just feel better when we sit with our animals or let them out of the barn. Maybe the setting sun mentality, if you look at adverts, it says, are you feeling low? It's very good if you take this trip to this idyllic island and get in your sea things and have lovely meals and all of this kind of thing. I mean, you know, nobody ever says in an advert, have you had that moment of lightness in your day today? Can you expand on it? Rather than the setting sun mentality, which is making a plan to help us forget our depression. He says, so genuine renunciation is knowing what to accept and what to reject, and how to step out and appreciate depression as a staircase. He says, fearlessness comes out of the realization of fear. The dot is taking the first step on the staircase of your depression, which is wobbly. He puts there, it's wobbly. Then you keep going, and it's fine. So when you get on the wobbly staircase, instead of thinking, oh my God, I can't do this, I'm going back home, I don't know how to survive the day, I'm going back in the cocoon, you actually wobble a little bit on that first step. You walk through it, you taste it, you feel it, and you know that it's impermanent. Then you take the next step and the next until you really have dissolved it. It's really important. Does anyone want to ask? And we're going to do a little meditation. Let's move the sound off because somebody's background music we're hearing. I just put the sound in. Unmute yourself if you want to ask. Anyone want to ask or say? There's a lot there. Yes, please, Jade. Just unmute yourself because I've just muted everybody.
Oh, okay. I think you can hear me now.
Absolutely.
So when in a state of depression, whatever circumstances brought you there,
Yes.
I think it's different for everyone. Sometimes when you have the chemical depression, it's a lot more debilitating and crippling. And it seems harder to get out. I feel that I think when you do come out of the depression, you tend to look into a lot of what you've said, and a lot of you feels embarrassed about having or being a depressant. And that shame is very hard to live with and deal with or even verbalize.
Glad you brought that.
So I mean, you become the slave to depression. And I think at one point, for me, it was such a long, repetitive occurrence that I can't remember whether it was myself or somebody made the suggestion, but it's a hard word that I was an addict to depression. And that changed my whole perspective. It changed things for me. And I'm not an addictive type of person. And maybe my ego didn't want me to feel like I was addicted to anything, because being depressed is such a dark place. Then you could have 10 therapists, you could have 10 institutions, and maybe not find a way to lift out of it. And the strength that is required, being so many, a variety of tools that helps you to come to lift from it. It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible.
I'm very glad you brought that up. And you know what I'm also glad about? That you brought up this feeling of feeling embarrassed about being depressed. So let's just talk for 1 minute of what you're saying. First of all, I think there definitely are chemical things in the brain that cause people to feel depressed. However, and also those people might really need some medication to help balance it. And if the medication really works, which it does occasionally on people, then it's really worth having that medication. But you've got to remember that prior to that onset of depression, whether it happened from 5 years old, 10 years old, 20, 30, whenever it happened in that lifetime, prior to that, there's usually a momentum. Okay, there's usually some kind of momentum that actually causes the chemical imbalance or whatever it is. Now, when you actually say that it becomes embarrassing, you don't want to tell people about it because you feel so awful, and so you just put on an act, but you feel terrible even putting on an act and everything. Now, when that happens, you see, this is where the Shambhala training on depression actually changes you, because there's nothing to be embarrassed about, but you need to get a different view of the depression. Because for me, this is just my personal opinion, and you could throw it out. under no documented evidence, just on how many people that I've seen over the years that have depression, on my evidence, you know, it really is a habitual momentum. And, you know, I think that it comes with the person into embodiment. I think it's also a memory from before, or a memory that where you are in your life doesn't feel right, doesn't feel the right place. So for me, as soon as you touch that primordial dot, as soon as you touch the primordial dot, then you actually know that you're in the right place at the right time. And that's when you can walk through fearlessly like a warrior through it. It's really important for you to understand that, because it really is workable no matter what it is. And it depends on how you look at your life and what you actually do in your life, because it's really possible to work it through. And even though you get on the wonky staircase, you still take another step on that wonky staircase. And you still look around, and sometimes you reach out for somebody to help you up the staircase. But it is workable, because none of it is tangible. None of it is actually permanent, even though it feels like that. It's merely an expression coming from the psyche, not from your true nature, because your true nature is never affected, not by the cocoon, not by the depression, not by anything at all. Therefore, for me, it's really important to know. Sometimes I've sat with people who are really at the end of their tether. They're actually telling me they want to commit suicide. And I go, please don't, because if you do, you're just going to carry this momentum with you right into the next lifetime. And you may not have the same opportunities. But I say to them, you've got a whole, what you are experiencing is one grain in the sandpit. And the sandpit of your true nature is vast and can carry you through this if you really, really work at it. But it's really difficult to work on that through thinking, intellectualizing, because you just come back to the same spot. But when you do the practices, when you take the meditation, when you take the becoming like the deity in the practices uplift you. So they actually carry you into the possibility of changing your whole life and your whole being, which are everyday activities. And even like people say, think positively. How can you think positively when you're in a deep, dark doldrum? It's really difficult. And if you do, it's a bit phony. But if you find the primordial dot, then you're free. And make a pick. Sorry, Eugene, you wanted to say something?
I heard something interesting this week from Abraham Hicks. So like they say, or they said the energy of your question and the energy of your solution is not the same.
Okay.
So like if your question, your challenge is often sad, fearful, uncertain, anxious, like angry, frustrated, all of that kind of stuff. And if you want to solve your solution, and it talks to what you were saying, it's like you almost have to catapult yourself in your ideal state and to solve that thing. So what would that feel like? What would that energy be like? How would that sit with me? How would I get out of bed if I didn't have this, or if I actually got what I wanted? And then like tapping into that primordial wisdom and trusting it to unfold better than you can make it happen.
Yeah.
And then just like kind of like saying, I'm on my path, it's okay, I'm gonna get there, I'm doing the best I can. It's okay if I don't get out of bed today. It's not that we had such high hopes for you today. But like with us in Buddhism, we can actually really manifest it, because if we do the practices, you can say, oh, like Ninja Rinpoche says, there's the two arrows. There's the pain and the depression, and then there's the clinging to the pain and depression. The pain and the depression is the first arrow. If you cling to it and make it an identity, that's the second arrow. And then you feel it twice. So if you can feel it, say, okay, cool, this is the path, this is the reality, but I can kind of imagine, or even just glimpse, or even just make one statement about what it would be like to transform that, and then just try and feel that and sit with it in meditation a little bit, and then release it and let it dissolve, and then trust it will come to you.
I love what you're saying, and a lot of people haven't got the know-how how to do that. But in simple terms, what you're saying is very, very true. And I know I have great dedication to the Tara practice. And then when I look at Tara, you know, and I look at her, I look at a picture of Tara. She's not external, she's internal. But when I look at a picture of her, she's beautiful, she's swift, she's got action accomplishment, she knows how to do what to do. And when you actually do the practice, it releases that adrenaline to actually act in a different way. That's why I keep telling all of you that the practices are so important, and they're so helpful to you, because they're not about external things. They're about your internal state. And what we're talking about here is that Chogyam Trungpa says, and he said this from a long time ago, and the world's, I think, a lot worse now. He said, I've got to bring this Shambhala wisdom to the world, because people have got to really understand that there is a workable way. And that workable way is when that primordial dot is recognized, when that primordial nature, when you know you have it, even though you can't feel it, you surrender something. And then, that's what Eugene's saying, and then it can operate through you. Sometimes, you know, when I'm in a situation, someone's asking me something, or someone's demanding something of me, and I don't really know how to go about it. And in that moment, I just surrender. And when you surrender, when you okay where you are, it starts to work through you, not from you. And you feel it. You feel like sometimes when I'm teaching, and I'm thinking, I'm teaching a group of people, they're not getting what I'm saying or something, and then I just surrender. And then it works through you. That's what your awakened nature, that's what the primordial dot is in the Shambhala wisdom. That's much bigger than you, but we don't know it. What Eugene's saying is, when you get to know it, then you've got a way to tackle your life. It's daringness. It's letting go with that skill and training. It's being daring. I'm going to dare to get up. I'm going to dare to let go of this depression. Not let go. I'm going to dare to walk through it. Because you know, of course, and even what Jade was saying, that a lot of people are really scared of letting go of any of those emotions, because that's what's defined them for a long time. So even though they're horrible, you don't want to get rid of it either, because you don't know how to be. You don't know how to act. You've been this morose, depressed person for half your life, and you don't know how to let it go. How not to let it go, how to walk through it until it and you dissolve into it and move on. So let's just do a little meditation, everybody, before we end tonight.
Mel, can I just make one small comment?
Of
Just
course, of
yeah,
course.
sorry, just before we move on, because it just seems important. Like with everything that everybody's just said, there seems to be a theme, with also what you have just said and Eugene as well, and the lady that was talking about depression. It's like there's a necessary step towards the primordial, and that's the thing that from the place of depression, or amnesia, really, is the most difficult. It's the step towards, it's the movement really
Yeah.
from darkness into light. And unfortunately, I want to use the word unfortunately because I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to say, but the
Saying it.
soul, the personhood, or whatever word we're going to use, has to ignite, and it's that ignition, that spark of ignition to make the movement at a soul level, which is the crucial bit that is just so difficult when you're not
Difficult, and people don't have the confidence in it.
confident, and maybe
That's the
sometimes the
point. They
knowledge.
don't that there is this part of you that knows, and that knows you in the right place at the right time, even though it feels so forlorn. And
Yeah.
the way to know it, you see, that's why I say to all of you, you know, you don't have to practice, but at least practice
Yeah. So
becoming aware and becoming intrinsically aware. Like yesterday, I was saying to the group, like, you know, if you really understand what the preliminary practices are about, you really start doing them, and then all of this connects that you're talking about. It really connects. So it's really important to try and do a little bit of the practice and ask questions about it. Try and get transmissions on it, but it really changes you. If I look at my life and I see in my life, I don't know how I would be at this stage of my life if I didn't have that primordial dot that I connect with every day. I don't know how I'd go about my life. I don't know how
but
I'd go.
now sometimes it's like, so like it can also be different levels at different stages, right? So like, so you always told us about the near Mayakaya and the different levels of energy that you can play at. So at the ultimate level, I think you can totally transform that energy through your practices. But I think if you're still very much trapped in your body and in your idea and your ego and your identity, even like just doing a short Chenrezi and doing that 108 or Mani Padme Hungs, and like you always do the to release that and just say,
Yeah.
I just want to today like release that in a I
Yeah,
just really want to, for 5 seconds, not take this off my shoulders and just release it in that energy. And that's a much more beautiful space than carrying that with you, overthinking about it, stressing about it. I would be so much better without it. And just that a day can do so much for you.
so much you can't imagine. But the point of the matter is, slowly this year, I'll bring in a lot of these things. I want to do it like this because I feel that this Shambhala stuff is really important to people in their lives, and then moving through it and into that real primordial dot. But let's do a little meditation anyway, everybody, and just sit in your meditative posture, right hand over left hand with the thumbs touching. And really, those of you who don't like to sit and who thinks sitting, it really makes me very, very restless, and it makes me irritable, and so many hundreds of thoughts come into my being, then go and do a walk in nature. That's fine. or a walk in your house, slowly. But what is important with the meditation is to bring the energy into the central channel and to be able to bring it all in, because the central channel energy is where you know things. It's beyond good and bad. It's beyond all those things. On the left-hand side is the wisdom energy in women, and in men on the opposite side, on the right, is the negative energy. So you don't want to use that negative energy. You want to bring it all into the central channel and just be present. And if you find this hard to do, your shoulders back, your spinal column straight, do it with a shame. Everybody's really having a hard time. Do it with a few walks. Do it on a bench in nature. Do it wherever you want for 3 minutes. Just breathe in the primordial dot in the sky. The sky is blue. It's open. It's spacious. It's the feminine mother energy out of which everything arises. It's emptiness, spaciousness, pure essence. Breathe it into your being. And if you're sitting in the garden, even better, wherever you are, just that moment, listening, not opting out, opting in, allowing yourself to hear the sounds, the nature, whatever there is in the environment, breathing in that blue sky and breathing out, letting everything be, not letting it go, because letting go means there was something to let go of. Letting be is, let it just be. Go back into the sky, into the essence, into its true nature. And then it will come up again. And you take a deep breath into the blue sky. Fill your being with it. Fill it completely in that central channel. Go to bed with it tonight. Those of you that are in the night zone, there's some of you in America in the morning zone, or wherever you are. But take it with you to bed, that pure, beautiful essence, and breathe out all the garbage. We're going to talk about recycling the garbage in your being, which Chogyam Trungpa speaks about. Just stay, even for 3 minutes a day, and do it when you're at work. Just stop, sit on a chair, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in the blue sky, breathe out all the garbage, the thoughts, the feelings, the depression. But there's nothing tangible there. You just let it be. And it's that spot where everything is just as it needs to be, even if it's really difficult and painful, and you're missing something, and you've lost something, and you're afraid, and you're anxious. All of those are just the expression of the pure essence. At least 3 times a day, even for 2 minutes at a time. Why? Because then we start to become aware of our intrinsic essence, of our intrinsic awareness, which knows what to do and knows how to be and allows things to unfold. Now, I must say that all of you are really lovely, and I want these discussions. I think they're wonderful, and I think a lot of you must come up with your questions, your discussions, your everything, because this month, you know, even when Chogyam gave these lectures, you know, he used to give a little bit, and then people used to speak and ask and talk and everything. It's really important because I really this year want your spirituality to relate to your world, not be something you do on a Tuesday or you do on another day and then you forget about it for the rest of the time. Must be something that's always there. So if we can just dedicate, and then I'll stay if anybody wants to ask me anything. But
Can you
let's
make me co-host, please?
Jane, you lost your co-host. Okay. So let's dedicate to all sentient beings, and I'm not going to go through everybody in the world, but I am going to say there are so many people at wars. You switch on the television, all those in Ukraine, all those in Gaza, all those everywhere in the world that are really, really in dire straits. If they could just get some, in the dedication of the merit, get one teeny thing that would help them to understand that this is the learning, this is the school, and they really, I pray that if there's any merit in what we've been talking about, that it can go to all sentient beings. And through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience, may all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonamdiye tamche zipane topne nipe dranam pamshene jeganachi balak dropaye sipe soli dro warsho. Okay, everybody.